Good morning. My name is Brian Wheeler, Director of Communications for the City of Charlottesville. Welcome to Cville360, a program to inform and engage the Charlottesville community. During the coronavirus pandemic, the city's leadership knows you want to hear from us frequently about our actions. We also want to hear from you and provide opportunities for engagement. We've launched this program on our streaming sites, Comcast Channel 10, and on a companion Zoom webinar, so you can tune in live and on demand while practicing social distancing. The webinar allows you to join the broadcast and ask questions of our guest. If you want to try the webinar, visit charlottesville.gov/Zoom for the registration information. A link to each show appears at the bottom of the page. At the top of each show, we'll have a brief update on the state of the coronavirus and the city's response. And today we will hear from Deputy Fire Chief Joe Powers, who will join us via webinar. The remainder of the program today will feature an update from Charlottesville's Mayor, Nikuyah Walker, and we will dive into the comprehensive plan and the Cville Plans Together initiative. And on the webinar, you can type your questions in the Q&A module, or you can click the raise your hand icon, and I'll bring you onto the program to directly interact with our guest. So before we get started, let's pull up a gallery view of everyone who's joining us today. And that'll take just a second here. All right, so on your screen there, we have Deputy Chief Joe Powers. We have Jenny Koch, who's an urban planner with Roadside Harwell. We have Missy Creasy, who's the city's Deputy Director of Planning. We have Alex Ikefuna, who's Director of Neighborhood Development Services. And we have our Mayor, Nikuyah Walker. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us. All right, now we'll switch back, and we're going to start with our Deputy Chief, Joe Powers. And Joe, let me bring up your camera here. If there's a lag in the camera, it's always my fault and not David's. All right, Deputy Chief Powers, can you hear us?
Hey Brian, nice to see you again, and I felt a little like the Brady Bunch there for a minute. So
yeah, we're all getting used to that view, aren't we?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah. Can you hear me good?
We can. We are getting a report that your network bandwidth is low. That's what Zoom is telling us.
Oh. How about I do this without the video? Do you want to try that?
We could do that.
Yeah, let's try that. Let's see what that looks like. Let me know if you can hear me.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, sorry. So good morning. I felt a little like the Brady Bunch there for a minute when you were seeing the video. But good morning, everyone. This is Joe Powers, the Deputy Chief from the city's fire department. I am also the incident commander for the COVID-19 management team. We still have 5 strategic goals for the COVID-19 management team, which include the provide essential services during the pandemic, protect and support our vulnerable populations, protect and support first responders and other direct service care providers, sustain our healthcare system and by flattening the curve, and prepare and plan for community support, transition, and recovery. So as of May 12th, today, and according to the data portal that the Thomas Jefferson Health District provides, we have experienced, in our district, 351 total cases of coronavirus with 13 fatalities. 68 of those cases are in the Charlottesville area, in the city of Charlottesville, and 123 cases in Albemarle County. Governor Northam on May 8th established Executive Order 61, which is called the Stay Safer at Home Phase 1, and it will begin as early as Friday, May 15th, which Phase 1 really begins easing some of the restrictions on businesses and should go through June 10th, as the order states. I'd like to hit on some of the highlights from the governor's plan. Churches may reopen, but with a reduction in their occupancy of 50%. Individuals that are attending services will need to sit 6 feet apart from others, but families can still sit together. Restaurants may begin serving patrons again, but in outdoor spaces only, and still have a 50% occupancy reduction. The employees that are serving the patrons will still need to wear masks, and they'll be using disposable menus. Retail stores will open at a 50% decrease in occupancy. And again, all of those employees should be wearing masks as well. And for all those folks that need salons and barber shops like our host, Brian, will need to get appointments, limited occupancy in those facilities at 50%. And even the customers, along with the service providers, will need to wear masks. From a citywide standpoint, Phase 1 doesn't look much different than the mitigation phase that we're in now. The Safer at Home order brings few changes to the city. Our indoor recreation facilities and our skate park will remain closed. Open space parks and our trails are open, but some of the parking lots will remain closed, and all of our playgrounds. City Hall remains closed during Phase 1, but remember, our city market has drive-through and curbside pickups. Lastly, while we're all safer at home, we need to stay at home as much as we can. Let's keep a safe distance from others and wear cloth, non-medical masks when we're in public. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Always cover that cough. Clean and disinfect all of the surfaces that we touch frequently. And if you're sick, don't go to work. Just call your doctor. Thanks, Brian, and sorry that you couldn't see me.
That's okay. Thank you for that update, Joe. And, maybe you could also share some information about what's on your agenda this week as the city makes plans to work with Albemarle County and think about how we coordinate this back to being in business, the Safer at Home order from the governor. What are the key decisions that have to be made?
Yeah, the great thing about working with Albemarle County is that we've been working together as a region and even with UVA for almost 2 months now during this COVID pandemic. When we got together actually late last week and early this week, and comparing notes about what Phase 1 looks like, much of what we're doing is aligned with what Albemarle County is doing. Moving forward, we're looking at strategies to communicate the needs of our community back to our jurisdictions and our organizations, but we also want to communicate our needs to the community, specifically to try to maintain within the borders of Executive Order 61. We're going to work with folks as much as we can, provide them the education they need, and we're all going to come out of this together in a stronger and safer community.
And is there any doubt in your mind that we will move forward along the lines of what the governor is recommending at this point? As we look around the country, there's certainly some cautionary flags being raised about, going back to normal too soon and easing these restrictions. So is there any evidence in the data for our specific part of Virginia that we need to be concerned about?
Yeah, so we're showing steps toward recovery here locally. The data is difficult to manage and obtain specifically for the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle County. It's a little easier to grab from the health district, but we're taking steps to better understand our data. We're moving forward into Phase 1 as a city. But again, the changes in the city government aren't going to change that much. And we're going to monitor the first couple weeks of Phase 1 to make sure that there's no reason to go back into mitigation. But this might be take 2 steps forward, take 1 step back, and sometimes we might take 2 steps back. Because as we get into Phase 1, 2, and 3, we may need to take a couple steps back into an earlier phase, or even as far as mitigation if we start to see spikes in virus outbreaks.
And is it safe to say that we don't know how long we might be in Phase 1?
Yeah, so the gating criteria for Phase 1 requires 14 days worth of decreased cases, and there's several other metrics that go along with that. But one of the things that we need to remember is that if we move too quickly, we're gonna go backwards. So it's going to be at least 2 weeks, but it quite possibly will be much longer.
And if there's anyone watching on the webinar that would like to ask a question of Deputy Chief Powers, you can raise your hand by clicking that icon in the Zoom webinar, or you can type your question in the Q&A module and I'll be happy to ask it for you. So Deputy Chief, what I hear you saying is with phase 1 and the governor asking that start Friday, May 15th, we'll be in this safer at home posture. We're still not having gatherings of more than 10 people. We're still wearing masks. We're still teleworking as much as we can. And City Hall is going to remain closed to the public during that phase 1. Could you say just one more thing about, excuse me, the restaurants and what we might expect to see, for example, on the downtown mall? What would we see in the outdoor dining facilities?
So outdoor dining, the restrictions from Executive Order 61 shows 50% reduction in occupancy. So that's including the outdoor dining areas. So they're going to have tables spaced out at least 6 feet apart so that the people that are dining at the tables are 6 feet from the other guests. No parties of more than 10. And if you're picking up food, the restriction of keeping less than 10 people in the lobby area or the reception area of the restaurant waiting for food pickup will be enacted as well. So down on the downtown mall, our fire marshals and police officers are going to be walking and making sure that all the restaurants have the support that they need to do their business, but also do it safely and maintain the aisleways and exits and everything for people to safely move about the downtown mall.
And we do have an audience question about how that enforcement of occupancy limits would take place. And I know on the town hall that the health district did last Friday, that was a question the health district was asked, because I believe they are the ones who would actually be responsible for enforcing these restrictions in different restaurants. But at the same time, they acknowledge that they don't have the staffing to do that on a wide scale. Chief Brackney, the Charlottesville Police Department chief, has also been on the program talking about how warnings would be something that would be issued initially, and just trying to give people, a course correction on their behaviors and what's the safer practice to follow. Deputy Chief Powers, is there anything you want to add about enforcement?
Yeah, I think we approach it as being one community. We're here to work with everybody, and we want everybody to be successful. There's less of enforcement and more of education. If establishments are pushing the limits of the rules, likely they may not realize what they're doing. And we're here to help them make sure that they stay safe, make sure that our community stays safe, and that we can all get out of this together.
Thank you, Chief Powers. We'll let you get on with the rest of your day and appreciate you making your weekly appearance. And we'll see you next week on the program.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I appreciate it. Nice to see everyone.
All right. Next up, we're going to speak with Charlottesville's Mayor, Nikuyah Walker. Mayor Walker was on our first program, and now we're on our 12th program, Mayor Walker. So we are glad we still have the city's support to keep doing these programs, and thank you for appearing again today.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. And it's, again, thank you for, and your team for coming up with this and putting in the effort twice a week to make sure that the citizens are informed.
Thank you. Now, a week ago, we had Vice Mayor McGill on the program, and the first thing we had to talk about was making sure that you were okay, because that was right after the city council meeting where you had to step aside during the meeting. And again, just want to check in and make sure you and your family are both okay at this point.
Yes, we are, and I'm very thankful for all of the people who reached out and inquired and asked questions. I didn't expect a tweet to go out. I should know where we are, but I do appreciate the kind thoughts and prayers. So yes, we're doing better.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
Well, and Vice Mayor McGill, had her hands full running her first meeting unexpectedly. So it was kind of funny in that we were concerned about you, but then in hindsight, she didn't have time to explain to the audience what had happened and why she was now running the meeting. But she did a great job. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping.
Yeah, I think because
go ahead.
It was no way. I said it was absolutely no way to plan. To plan for a situation like that. So I am grateful that she was able to, move things forward.
So we're going to talk today about the budget, the Vibrant Communities funding, and also get a preview from you about tomorrow's council work session. So where would you like to start when it comes to the budget?
First, I guess just acknowledged that it was a very, difficult process. Budget season every year is difficult, and I know that staff is in it for much longer than council. But, trying to, attempt to make sure that we, take care of employees and citizens and employees so that they can take care of citizens, trying to keep that as a priority, it was my main goal. And I think we all fully acknowledge that, there's a lot of unknowns with this budget. So there's we're just waiting to see. I'm sure all of us are aware that we'll have to amend, this budget, that be little over $5 million that was decreased from the originally fiscal year 21 proposal to what staff will be working with this year. I think we all know that was just the beginning, and hoping that some of the money we put in reserves, that's a little over $6 million now, and some of the other reserve pots may be able to sustain the city during this uncharted time. So there's just a lot of what ifs, and trying to create scenarios and plan around what it how you best care for citizens and the employees during this time.
And Mayor Walker, I know you commented during the last council meeting about the level of engagement from the community as they're trying to interact with government and with council via these new technology platforms, and how that's an obstacle for folks. In the past, we would have already approved a budget at this point. And so now we're looking at having a public hearing on the budget on Monday. Later this week, the city manager will publish the final recommendations and let the community react to those. But tell us what you're hearing from community members, maybe outside of these forums, about their interest in the budget and being able to provide feedback and feel like they are involved.
So primarily, and I think most of council members are hearing from, the business community, individuals who are, ready to figure out how to continue as they were before the pandemic started. I think a lot of people are completely taxed, and we have to, understand that this is a very difficult time to try to navigate, a process. And then for individuals who don't feel like their needs are heard or met, originally they are some of the most vulnerable members of our community. So they would be spending probably their time figuring out how to prepare and keep their families safe during this time, and may not necessarily, have the space and energy to pay close attention to the budget at this time. So I think it's important for us as counselors and staff to ensure that, we are taking a holistic look in every decision that we're making, and really trying to limit the impact on the community as much as we can. Limit the impact on staff members. No one, chose this crisis. So making sure that we do things that may not be as fiscally manageable at this time. I mean, we just approved 2 administrative days for our employees, while, UVA just furloughed individuals. Do we know the long-term impact of that? We don't know, but I think, taking care of people, giving them the space to be able to, care for themselves and their families. And also, that has to always be considering factors when we are talking about dollars. It's not just keeping people, on the payroll, but acknowledging that their mental health is important also, and giving them the space to just breathe. And I hope that the majority of our employees were able to take advantage of the first day on yesterday, Monday the 11th, to take care of themselves, because this is a very tough time.
Thank you. Yeah, and as one employee who did take advantage of that administrative day yesterday, thank you. It was a good mental health refresher for me, so I appreciate it. And I think, and I've said this to Dr. Richardson and to members of council on this program, the commitment to city employees has been very apparent and very strong. And so on behalf of those that are benefiting from that, thank you. On the budget, we have the public hearing Monday night, and the public can certainly participate in one of these webinars if they want to join the conversation that way. They can also send you an email at council@charlottesville.gov. So there's still ways that they can reach out and share their feedback about the budget, and we hope people will do that. One of the key decisions that was made last week, Mayor Walker, related to the school funding, and I wonder if you could update the community on that decision.
So the school funding was increased by about 1.3 million is what we added, and I think that's around maybe 60 million. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but 60 or so million total that is transferred from the city to the school division. And the vote for that additional 1.3 million in funds was along the same thought process, to make sure that the school system, could do their best in trying to prevent, laying off or furloughing their employees, and that they had the space to, fulfill the demands that are on them at this time, to go from in-classroom learning style to a virtual learning style, and figure out how to, for me, my yes vote was to, make sure that the teachers and staff understood that we were dedicated to them, so that they could use this time to be as creative as possible. Because I think it's, very important for us to note that, inequality is, it doesn't just happen, automatically. There's a creation, in there. And we already know what our school division, the reading rates, math rates, especially for the most vulnerable members of our community. And for me, ensuring that teachers are in the best space that they can possibly be in, so they can be as creative as possible to ensure that they are reaching our kids in a way that they can learn in this new environment and under very stressful, conditions, was what I hope happens from that continued support from the city to the school division.
And if you're on the webinar and you'd like to ask a question of Mayor Walker, you can type it in the Q&A module, or you can click the raise your hand icon and we'll bring you into the conversation directly. Mayor Walker, in the few minutes we've got left, I wanted to touch on the Vibrant Communities funding. That's the funding that Council approves for a variety of nonprofit organizations. And Council was in the midst of re-engineering its whole approach to that funding process. And then obviously everything's been upended by the pandemic. So where are we right now in making those decisions about nonprofit funding initiatives?
Yes, so with the Vibrant Community Fund, formerly the ABRT, as you stated, we were in the process of figuring out, more just and equitable process for those funds annually. And we were in phase one of that and trying to decide as a council where funding would go this year, right before the pandemic happened. And I think at this point, we're waiting for our Human Services Director, Kathy Dimick, and our budget team, Chrissy Hamill and Ryan Davison, to review some new information that we've requested from the nonprofits, specifically just trying to get a feel for how they are operating during, during the pandemic, and making sure that we are supporting the organizations that are having the greatest impact, and that can have the greatest impact, to make sure that those dollars are reaching people most in need. And we've had conversations surrounding whether that money, even stays, in-house this year, and with the amount of support that our Human Services Department. And as I'm saying that, no decisions have been made, and we understand that nonprofits are in the same boat that everyone else is. They've had, reduction in their funding streams, but we also know that some of them have been able to fundraise at a level that they haven't been able to in the past, just because people are, in a more giving space and sharing, their resources more. So we just want to make sure that we are able to help the community as much as possible with that, $2 million worth of funding. And as soon as we have the, space to move forward again, we will continue with, revamping that process.
And is it council's goal to have that information before the budget is finalized June 1, or are you expecting that those would be amendments that would be made after June 1 with respect to the Vibrant Communities funding?
So it's highly unlikely that that'll be ready as of June, 1st. We know that the allocations are usually, made by July, and that nonprofits are dependent upon that money for, their operations. And so we're going to try, as best as we can to get that money allocated, sometime in July, but June is we're not going to make a June deadline at this time.
And Mayor Walker,
it'd be too much stress on all that together.
Sure. And, you heard Deputy Chief Powers talk about getting into the phase 1 of our transition here. And any thoughts you want to share with the community as we embark on that work and think about how we position city services? Mayor, did you hear my question, Mayor Walker?
So I've been saying, and I'll continue to say forever, that yes. Can you hear me?
Yep, we're breaking up a little bit, but go ahead.
Hello?
Can you hear us?
Right. Oh, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes. All right. Okay. So I think we have to always keep in mind that there are so many unknowns with coronavirus, COVID-19, and that we, with those, don't know that each time we talk about moving into a phase, we fully acknowledge as the people in positions of power that we are accepting that some people because some people haven't taken this, haven't been able to wrap their mind around the seriousness of it even now with all the things that we have in place. And so we know that each phase that we move into, that when, as Chief Powers was saying, we may have to take 2 steps back, those 2 steps back will mean that some people have been positive and some people would have lost their lives. So in this community, and I know we have to pay very close attention to the governor's directives, and that they made it very clear that communities cannot, make decisions on their own about how they move into phases unless the data shows that they should be able to make that decision. I hope that we always in this community, and I hope that the surrounding communities take the same approach is look at this from a public health perspective. And I understand the economic impact that we're having, that, this pandemic is having on our region and our world and everything in between. But people will not be able to reap the benefits of those, reopenings if they are not alive. And so that's, I'm concerned about some of the phase one, like churches 50% capacity, but a 10-person limit. And the 6 feet apart in restaurants. I know there was a contact tracing in China that, one of the outbreaks was traced back to, a restaurant setting. And so as long as we're keeping those things, in mind, I think an outdoor setting is much better than an indoor setting. And as long as our restaurants are taking the safety of the public and their employees as a first priority, I just, hope that we stay, along those lines. I hope people tip well as they're picking up and taking their orders home, instead of dining in. Those type of things is what I hope until we get more answers about how this, virus works, how it's transmitted, and, what, and how we heal people from it.
And then one last thought, Mayor Walker, for tomorrow, Council's having a work session starting at 3 o'clock. The public that wants to participate can go to charlottesville.gov/Zoom and register for that webinar. They can also watch it live in all the usual places on our website and on Channel 10. But can you tell the audience what is the goal of tomorrow's work session related to boards and commissions?
Yes. Tomorrow we'll be having a work session on boards and commissions to try to establish a meeting schedule. First, prioritize which boards and commissions can start to meet, and we have to make sure that they have support from staff, the communication team, and the counselors. So it is my hope that we are really focused in on, again, an equity issue and the safety and well-being of all parties involved, making sure that people are, not taxed. Brian, I think it's important for everybody to understand anyone who can operate pre, March 2020, it's something, to really say about them, and we need to probably study them as much as we're studying this virus, right? And so this is a very trying time, and we just need to make sure whatever decisions we make about even, as some people may look at which boards and commissions can meet, but we have to understand we have citizens who can't engage or are too taxed to engage, employees that will be adding a lot more on their plate, citizen members who can participate and who not, and always, important for me is the equity in every decision we make. But that's what the discussion will be about, which boards and commissions can start meeting, what the timetable would look like for other boards and commissions to start meeting. As you know, everybody will probably think that they need to meet. And so we'll have to make some really hard decisions there. And then especially make sure that your team has the time and space in their calendar to support all of these, meetings so that the citizens will know what's going on in them.
Thank you very much, Mayor Walker, for joining us. And thank you for your kind words about our staff and all employees. We really appreciate it. Next, we're going to focus on the city's comprehensive plan and a new initiative called Cville Plans Together. I'm going to bring up our gallery view again and show you who we have to speak today. So we have Jenny Koch, who is a urban planner with Roadside Harwell. We have Missy Creasy, who's our Deputy Director of Planning. And we have Alex Ikefuna, who's Director of Neighborhood Development Services. And let's start with a question for whoever wants to go first, but what is Cville Plans Together?
Well, Cville plans together. First of all, Brian, thanks for inviting us to your show this morning and for actually implementing this program to update the community on the COVID-19 situation. By your question, essentially it's a phrase we coined, the consultant and the steering committee, to make it easier for folks to internalize the process. As you know, for several weeks now, every time we provide an update or we publish something on the planning process, it says comp plan update, zoning rewrite, and affordable housing strategy. And that is a very long acronym or statement describing a process. So it made it imperative that we need to come up with something that is very catchy, short, and something that people can remember in a matter of seconds. So that's how that phrase came about. Essentially, it describes the comprehensive planning process, the zoning rewrite, and affordable housing strategy.
Great. And of course, the Planning Commission started its work on updating the comprehensive plan, which is something I think localities in Virginia have to do every 5 years, is update their comp plan. This started in 2017, 2018. So is this a restart of that whole process, or what is different about it? Who can address that?
Not necessarily. I think if you recall, we're in the process of completing the comp plan update. And then in terms of comprehensive plan, there are several elements, within a comprehensive plan. And the August 12, 2017, and the several issues associated with that, including equity, did raise the stake. And then the huge focus on the affordable housing, which largely will inform the completion of the comprehensive plan and the zoning rewrite, essentially necessitated that the comprehensive plan, the zoning rewrite, and the affordable housing strategy be consolidated. Council opted to go in that direction and then consolidated the three process into one and provided the funding to take it to the next level.
So if you're in the audience, you have a question for our urban planners here, you can type it in the Q&A module, or you can raise your hand by clicking that icon in the webinar. If you haven't joined us via webinar, you can go to charlottesville.gov/Zoom and get the registration information. Let's go to Jenny Koch next. And Jenny, your firm, Roadside Harwell, has done a lot of work with the city. You've now been engaged to work on this project. So tell us, what's your focus right now?
So right now we are working on the first phase of community engagement, which started with establishing this name for the process, Cville Plans Together, as Alex described. And we're working on ways to reach out to the community and hear from the community about priorities and goals for this process and for the future of the city. And a lot of what Mayor Walker was saying about who has access to these meetings right now, who can be giving their input, that's something we've been thinking a lot about really carefully. When we came onto this project, that was a huge focus for us, was really if we're having a big push to make sure equity is incorporated into the comprehensive plan, to do that, we can look at data. We can look at who has access to affordable, high quality housing, who has access to good transportation options, a variety of different elements of equity. But without talking to people directly, we're not hearing everything we need to be hearing. And so we have the website up. And I'm happy to say we will be posting, hopefully later today, a couple of options for sitting in on webinars to have an introduction to the project. But again, we know not everyone has time or technology to sit in on a webinar, and so we've been thinking about other ways to gather input. We'll have a community survey online. We're also doing some small group discussions in the next, I will say 3 to 4 weeks. That will be gathering people online and over the phone to give us some feedback about their goals and priorities. And we're also looking at other ways, potentially having things like a toll-free phone line people can call into and leave comments. Potentially, going out, having some of our community partners going out and helping us to maybe put up some flyers, helping people to know that this process is going on, even if they're not, going onto the website or going onto our social media.
And Jenny, you've joined this project with the city at a real critical juncture, I think, in the city's history. Pre-August 2017, when we talked about the sense of place in Charlottesville, you think about the bucolic countryside. You talk about the Charlottesville Downtown Mall, World Heritage sites like the lawn at the University of Virginia and Monticello. And then August 2017 happens, and the conversation has really changed in this community. And affordable housing has definitely gone front and center when it comes to new development and new initiatives being funded by city government. You were talking about, getting the citizens involved. And we've always had a lot of people in the city who want to be involved in urban planning decisions and envisioning the future of what our community looks like. But now we have the pandemic. So as a consultant working with the city, how are you going to confront some of those challenges with COVID-19 and get people involved in something that can be really complex and have a steep learning curve?
Yeah, this is something we're encountering on, every project that I'm working on, every project that, my colleagues are working on, every project I'm sure some of you are working on. And so, first off, we're taking this step by step. We wanted to start reaching out to people, so we have this process started, but we're not just full steam ahead on this. We're sort of, as we get going in the next few weeks, we're going to be checking in and seeing, who are we hearing from? How many people are we hearing from? How might we need to adjust our strategies to be hearing from other people, especially those who are, maybe, like I said, those people who don't typically come out to meetings, who aren't actively searching for information about these processes. And so, as I said, our original plan for that was to be meeting with people in person and have some meetings out in neighborhoods, in the communities in Charlottesville, making it hopefully easier for people to come out and talk with us. So we are reaching out to people as directly as we can right now to let them know about the options for giving their input. But, if in the next few weeks, the COVID situation has remained as it is, and we can't, we don't foresee a time when we can be meeting with people in even small groups, we'll need to reassess, the schedule and see how we move forward from here.
I'd like to invite Missy Creasy to chime in here. And Missy, you've been involved in a number of comprehensive plan updates over the years. And, this one we're taking on not only the comprehensive plan, but also this strategic plan for housing affordability and then the whole zoning ordinance. So, compare and contrast for us. How does this feel different for you compared to previous efforts?
Well, it's definitely very different than what we've had before. In other cases, we've had one element going at a time. And one plan going at a time. We've done them in different ways over the years. With this one, we were on a path moving forward, and then things changed in our community in 2017. And then we needed to change with that change. And so at that point in time, we were able to get the consultants, work towards getting them on board, and then our whole world decided to change in the midst of this. from this point, the timing of this worked out in a strange way because the consultants were doing a lot of groundwork. They were talking to individual folks, talking with small groups, gathering data, analyzing from that perspective. And so for the last, 2 months or so, we've been doing a lot of strategizing about how we can move forward with the constraints that we have, but they've also been able to continue working through that analysis phase. I think we've got some pretty good ideas about how to initially reach out to folks, and we've been very, very concerned about how we reach out to those who don't have the opportunity right now, and it's for a variety of reasons. And I think the mayor spoke to that very well when she spoke earlier. It's a matter of resources and time for a lot of people. This is a tough time, a lot of change going on in the world. We have these opportunities coming up next week and the next couple of weeks, and as we see how they go, we'll be analyzing those. We also have some thoughts on what we'll do as we get little openings in the community. But we're definitely going to go slow with that. But we're hopeful that we can change this process as we need to meet what we need to safely throughout the community.
And let's go to Jenny Koch. And Jenny, before we forget, I want you to make sure to announce when the next meeting of the steering committee is happening. Tell us what that steering committee is, what their role is, and then when is the next expected meeting that the public could observe if they're not a member.
Yes, thank you. I was just going to make sure we talked about the steering committee. We've met with our steering committee twice. This is a group comprised of various representatives from the city of Charlottesville, different organizations, who have focuses on different sort of elements relevant to this process. You can see the full list of our steering committee membership on the website. There's a section, if you go to resources and then document and media center, you'll see within there we've got a list of the members and a list of materials and things we've discussed at previous meetings, including a recording of the last meeting, which was in April 7th. And so what we've been talking about with them was in our first meeting, which was late January, we sort of gave an overview of our process and got some input on sort of every element of it, but focused on community engagement, which we've had to shift our planned process from that point due to COVID. And we also started talking about some priorities related to the comp plan, including housing and affordability. When we met with the steering committee for the second time in April 7th, we talked about, again, the engagement process at that point for April and May, which has now shifted to May and June. And then we had a large discussion about different issues related to housing and affordability. One of our partners, HRNA, went through a presentation that looked at, different aspects of housing, what the data says about those things in Charlottesville, from affordability to access to opportunity, quality of housing, et cetera. And then, based on that list of issues and looking at the data, we wanted to hear from the steering committee, what they thought were the biggest priorities for the city. And that was a great discussion. As I said, the recording is, you can see it, there's a YouTube link on the website. And so where we're planning to go with the next discussion, which is on June 2nd, to answer your initial question. On June 2nd, we're planning to sort of share what we've been hearing from people so far in this, over the next couple of weeks, in the next few weeks, what we're hearing from people, and then, sort of move into a discussion of initial discussion of some potential tools for addressing some of the housing affordability issues in the city. And so these are just preliminary discussions, and we will be moving on from there to discuss in the next phase of community engagement some of those tools with the overall community. But our first step is to discuss them with the steering committee.
Great. And we're going to put the website link up on our screen right now, cvilleplans.together.com, and it's certainly linked from the City of Charlottesville's website, where we have a page devoted to the comprehensive plan update. I want to ask each of our guests for some final thoughts here. We'll start with Alex Ikefuna. And Alex, one thing I think maybe you could help is, give us an example of why this is important to the average citizen. So somebody who's followed, the city, cares about the community, wants to see more affordable housing. How do decisions when it comes to zoning and the comp plan, how does that lead to more affordable housing happening?
Well, first of all, thanks for that question, because I think that's the overarching question related to this discussion. Essentially, the comprehensive plan basically provides opportunity for a community to decide what the community is going to be when it grows up. Essentially, with the collection of policies that will come out of the comprehensive plan, it tells us how to move from where we are to where we need to get to. And one of the reasons why we are doing this, the comprehensive plan first, we need to update that because Charlottesville has grown over time. For instance, in the past 7 years, the city has been growing by between 1% or 2% annual growth rate. And that growth rate may very well continue. And then we need places where people will live. And secondly, the housing needs assessment indicated that in 2017 that we need 3,300 residential units to meet our at least a baseline community needs. And by 2040, that need will rise up to 4,000 plus. And the zoning, our zoning ordinance, it's very restrictive. There are several barriers within the zoning ordinance that makes it a little bit challenging to create opportunities to spur affordable housing development. So this plan update is essentially designed to provide leeway in terms of the zoning provision so that the city will be able to address affordable housing going forward in the future. Now, that's not the only strategy to address our affordable housing issues. There are several other strategies, but the zoning, it's one part of that, and it's considerably a barrier to creation of affordable housing strategy. And the housing piece, which is a major element itself, needs to address several gamut of issues, including recommendations and specific recommendations, funding mechanisms that we can use in terms of addressing affordable housing. So these are some of the reasons why we are doing this. And the zoning ordinance need to implement what's in the comprehensive plan, because right now the zoning ordinance is like one brain, the comprehensive plan is another brain, but they are not talking to each other. So at the end of the day, when we complete this process, we expect that the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan will be in sync with one another. So that's essentially the reason why we are doing this. And then we need to get it done as quickly as possible, hopefully within the next 20 months, so we can start implementing the plan to see how much we can go in terms of creation of affordable housing.
And we'll switch to Missy Creasy for some final thoughts. Missy, as Alex described it there, all the brains coming together, that often happens in your office. How's the world going to be different when we have a new comprehensive plan and the strategic plan for housing affordability and a new zoning ordinance?
Well, we're hopeful that when all three of those elements talk to one another and are in sync with one another, that we'll have a clearer direction on where to go. Right now, The words in the comp plan and what's in the zoning ordinance don't necessarily reflect the ideas of where the community wants to go. And so the point of this effort is to bring all of these things into tune with one another, so that they'll move forward at the same speed with the intent of what the community wants at this point in time. And things continue to change, but overall we know that we're a desirable community, that people are coming to our community, and we need to figure out the best ways to accommodate the people who are coming to our community, as well as keeping the historic fabric that we have.
And Jenny, we'll give you the last word here on Cville Plans Together. Any final thoughts? I'll leave it at that.
I would just say, please go to the website. We'll have up a link to register or information about the steering committee meeting on June 2nd, as well as opportunities to engage in the next few weeks. We'll have some posted in the next couple of days, and we'll keep adding to the website. So please keep checking back. And there is an email list you can sign up for if you go to the Stay Involved tab.
And thank you to all our guests who joined us today. We covered a lot of ground and really appreciate their time and sharing their expertise. Our next show will be in 1 week on Tuesday, May 19th at 11 a.m. and we'll break down the Monday night council meeting and the budget public hearing. Please contact me if you have ideas for future shows, and please stay healthy.